Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The oppressive humidity of a Port Charles summer had settled over the city like a damp blanket, making the air in the garage at the Savoy feel thick and heavy with more than just moisture. It was charged with a tension that had been building for weeks, a slow-burning fuse attached to a powder keg of secrets and betrayal. Curtis Ashford stood over the sleek chassis of a vintage Jaguar, a wrench in his hand, but his focus wasn't on the intricate engine before him. His mind was miles away, trapped in the sterile, silent room at the hospital where his wife, Portia, sat vigil, her face a mask of fragile hope and profound exhaustion. Their world had been upended when their son, T.J., was severely injured in a violent confrontation. The doctors had stabilized him, but he remained in a coma, his future a terrifying question mark. Each beep of the heart monitor was a prayer, each shallow breath a reason to hold on to their own. The Ashford family, a bastion of strength and unity in Port Charles, was cracking under the strain, their foundations shaken by the random cruelty of fate. The familiar creak of the garage's side door broke the silence. Curtis didn't need to look up to know who it was. Only one person moved with that particular blend of purpose and hesitation. Drew Kane stepped into the dim light, his face etched with a concern that went beyond the usual friendly worry. He looked haunted, as if he'd been carrying a weight too heavy for even his broad, capable shoulders. "Hey," Drew said, his voice low and gravelly. "How is he?" Curtis finally lowered the wrench, wiping his hands on an already grease-stained rag. The gesture was futile, a mechanical response to a question that had no good answer. "No change. Portia won't leave his side. I had to practically force her to take a shower and get some real food. She's running on fumes." He sighed, the sound heavy with a father's helplessness. "It's like waiting for a storm to hit, but you don't know if it's going to be a thunderclap or a hurricane." Drew nodded, his eyes scanning the garage as if checking for unseen listeners. The habit was a remnant of his past life in intelligence, a life both he and Curtis understood all too well. "And how are you holding up, Curtis?" "I'm his father." "I hold up," Curtis replied, his tone firm but the tremor in his hand as he set the rag down betraying him. "I have to. For Portia, for Trina, for TJ." He finally looked directly at Drew, his gaze sharpening. "But you didn't come here just to check on TJ. What's going on, Drew? You look like you've seen a ghost." Drew let out a long, slow breath, leaning against the workbench. The metal felt cool against his palms. "It's worse than a ghost. A ghost is from the past. This is a live wire, and it's about to electrocute everything you care about." Curtis straightened up, his detective instincts kicking in, pushing the fog of paternal fear to the periphery. "Talk to me." "It's about Sonny," Drew began, the name hanging in the air between them. Sonny Corinthos was a force of nature in Port Charles, a man whose business dealings cast long, dark shadows, but who also possessed a paradoxical, fierce loyalty to those he considered family. The Ashfords, 3 years of complicated history, existed in a precarious space within that orbit. "What about him?" Curtis asked, his guard immediately up. His relationship with Sonny was one of wary respect, complicated by the fact that his own family was now intertwined with Sonny's world through his daughter Trina's relationship with Spencer Cassadine, who was under Sonny's protection. Drew's jaw tightened. "I've been piecing things together. Conversations I wasn't meant to hear, money moving in ways that don't make sense for any of his legitimate holdings. At first, I thought it was just another one of his ventures. But the pattern kept pointing in one specific, horrifying direction." He paused, gathering the words, knowing that once they were spoken, they could not be taken back. The truth would become a weapon, and Curtis would be forced to wield it. "Curtis, Sonny is plotting against your family." The words landed not with a shout, but with the quiet, devastating finality of a tombstone sealing shut. Curtis stared, uncomprehending for a moment. "What? That's insane. Why? We're not a threat to him. We've never been a threat to him. It's not about being a threat. It's about control. It's about a perceived betrayal," Drew explained, his voice urgent. He believes, or he's been led to believe, that your family, that you, specifically, were involved in the attempt on his life a few months back. The one that nearly tore his organization apart. Curtis barked out a harsh, disbelieving laugh. That's ridiculous. I was the one who helped piece together who was really behind that. Jason and we provided intel that cleared his inner circle. And that's the genius of it, don't you see? Drew insisted, stepping closer. Someone, and I'm still working on who, has fed him a counter-narrative. They've fabricated evidence, twisted the facts to make it look like your help was a smokescreen, a way to divert suspicion away from yourselves while you positioned yourselves to take over his territory. Curtis felt a cold dread seep into his bones, colder than the fear for his son. This was a different kind of danger, a calculated, venomous attack. Take over his territory? We're not gangsters, Drew. I'm a private investigator. Portia is a doctor. This is madness. It is madness. But it's a madness Sonny is being sold, and he's buying it. He sees TJ's injury not as a tragedy, but as a potential power play. He thinks it's a ruse, a way to garner sympathy while you move your pieces into place on the board. Drew's eyes were full of a painful empathy. He's planning to strike first. To neutralize what he sees as an emerging rival family. He's going to come after your business, your reputation, your assets, and if that doesn't work, he won't hesitate to come after you and yours directly. The garage seemed to shrink around them, the walls closing in. Curtis's mind raced, trying to find a flaw in Drew's logic, a reason this couldn't be true. But it fit. The strange, cold demeanor Sonny had exhibited toward him recently, the way his men seemed to be just a little too present in the areas Curtis frequented. He had written it off as the general paranoia that came with Sonny's life. Now, he saw it for what it was, the gathering clouds before the storm. He can't believe this, Curtis whispered, more to himself than to Drew. He knows me. He knows my family. The person poisoning his ear is someone he trusts implicitly, Drew said. That's the only way this works. It's someone close to him, someone whose word he would never question. And they've done their homework. The evidence is compelling even to me, and I know you're innocent. Who? Curtis demanded, his voice hardening. Who is it? I don't know for sure, Drew admitted, frustration evident in his tone. My money is on one of the new players he's brought in. Maybe someone from his past, someone with an old grudge they're settling by using you as a proxy. But knowing who isn't the immediate problem. The immediate problem is that the plan is already in motion, Curtis. The first move is imminent. What's the first move? Curtis asked, his body coiling like a spring. Drew looked down at his hands, then back up, his expression grim. I don't know the specifics. The conversations I overheard were fragmented, coded. But the intent was clear. It's meant to be a message. Something that will shatter your family's sense of security, something that will show you his reach and his ruthlessness. It's coming, Curtis. Today. Maybe even now. A silent understanding passed between the two men. This was no longer about business or territory, it was about survival. The Ashford family, already brought to its knees by a medical crisis, was now in the crosshairs of the most powerful and dangerous man in Port Charles. I have to get to the hospital, Curtis said, already moving, grabbing his keys from the hook on the wall. I have to get Portia and Trina out of there. We need to go somewhere safe. I'll do what I can from the outside, Drew said, falling into step beside him. I'll keep digging, try to find the source of this, the proof we need to expose the lie. But you need to be careful. Sonny has eyes everywhere. Curtis paused at the door, his hand on the knob. He looked back at Drew, the friend who had just risked everything to bring him this warning. Thank you, Drew. For this. For having my back. Always, Drew replied, his tone leaving no room for doubt. With a final, grim nod, Curtis pushed the door open and stepped out into the oppressive afternoon, the weight of the impending doom settling on his shoulders. The city, once a familiar landscape, now felt like a battlefield, and he was racing against an unseen clock to protect his family from a threat they didn't even know was coming. The hospital room was an island of sterile calm in the swirling chaos of Curtis's mind. The steady, rhythmic beep of TJ's heart monitor was the only sound, a metronome counting down the seconds of their precarious peace. Portia was seated in the chair beside the bed, her hand wrapped around her son's, her head bowed as if in prayer. Trina sat on the other side, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed from a cycle of tears and exhausted sleep. They looked up in unison as Curtis entered, their expressions shifting from weary sadness to confusion at the intensity on his face. "Curtis? What is it?" Portia asked, her voice thin with worry. "Is everything okay?" He moved to her side, placing a hand on her shoulder, his touch meant to be reassuring, but the tension in his fingers betrayed him. "We need to go. Now." Trina stood up, her brow furrowed. "Dad? What are you talking about? We can't leave TJ." "We're not leaving him," Curtis said, his voice low and urgent. "We're moving him. I've spoken to the chief of staff. We're transferring him to a private facility upstate. It's safer." "Safer?" Portia's medical training kicked in, her tone turning professional. "Curtis, he's in a coma. Moving him is a huge risk. His condition is stable, but it's fragile. I can't authorize a transfer without a compelling medical reason." "What's going on?" He looked from his wife's confused, frightened face to his daughter's determined one. He couldn't tell them the whole truth. Not here. Not now. The walls felt like they had ears. "It's a security issue. I can't explain fully, but we are not safe here. I have reason to believe there's a threat directed at our family." "A threat? From who?" Trina pressed, her instincts, honed by her own brushes with Port Charles's darker elements, immediately alert. "That doesn't matter right now," Curtis said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "What matters is that we get somewhere secure. I need you both to trust me. Please." Portia searched his eyes, seeing the genuine, raw fear there. This wasn't his usual protective mode, this was something deeper, something more desperate. She nodded slowly, her trust in him overriding her professional caution. Okay, Curtis. If you say we need to go, we'll go." The process of arranging an emergency medical transfer was a whirlwind of hushed conversations with doctors, signed forms, and the coordinated effort of a specialized medical transport team. Curtis was a flurry of activity, his phone constantly at his ear as he coordinated with a security team he trusted implicitly. He was a man building a fortress while the enemy was already at the gate. As the medical team carefully prepared TJ for transport, securing him to a gurney with all the necessary life support equipment, a strange calm fell over the room. The immediate action had momentarily stifled the pervasive fear. Portia and Trina gathered their few belongings, their movements robotic, their minds struggling to catch up with the sudden, drastic change in their reality. It was in this brief, quiet moment that Curtis's phone vibrated again. He glanced at the screen, expecting an update from his security lead. It was an unknown number. A cold finger of dread traced a path down his spine. He almost didn't answer it, but some deep, grim instinct made him swipe to accept the call and bring the phone to his ear. "Curtis Ashford," he said, his voice deliberately neutral. There was a pause on the other end, filled with the faint sound of static. Then, a voice, smooth, cultured, and utterly devoid of warmth, spoke. It was a voice he recognized, one of Sonny's lieutenants, a man named Milo who handled his more delicate affairs. "Curtis," Milo said. "Sonny would like a word." Before Curtis could respond, another voice came on the line. It was Sonny Corinthos himself. There was no friendly greeting, no inquiry about TJ's health. His tone was flat, cold, and carried the weight of absolute authority. "Curtis," Sonny said. "I understand you're making arrangements to leave town." The blood drained from Curtis's face. How could he know? The transfer had been arranged in the strictest confidence only minutes ago. Drew's warning echoed in his mind. He has eyes everywhere. My son's care is my only concern, Sonny, Curtis replied, keeping his voice even, betraying none of the panic clawing at his throat. A father's concern is a powerful thing, Sonny said, and there was a subtle, menacing shift in his tone. It makes him do things he wouldn't normally do. It makes him take risks. It makes him make mistakes. What are you getting at, Sonny? Curtis asked, his grip tightening on the phone. I'm getting at loyalty, Curtis. A concept I hold in the highest regard. I've always considered you and your family to be on the right side of that line. But lately, I've been presented with information. Disturbing information. It seems your loyalty might be flexible. Whatever you've heard is a lie, Curtis stated, his voice firm. Someone is playing you. That's what people always say when they're caught, Sonny countered, a hint of steel entering his voice. I'm a man who believes in evidence. And I believe in sending a clear message. You need to understand the consequences of betrayal, Curtis. You need to understand the price. A chill, colder than anything he had ever felt, seized Curtis. Sonny, whatever you're planning, don't. My family has nothing to do with your business. My son is lying in a hospital bed. And that is a tragedy, Sonny said, and for a fleeting second there might have been a shred of genuine sympathy, but it was quickly buried under the cold calculus of his paranoia. But in this world, tragedies are often used as shields. I can't afford to be sentimental. I have an organization to protect. A message needs to be sent. What message? Curtis whispered, the words catching in his throat. You'll know it when you see it, Sonny replied, his voice dropping to a deadly quiet. And when you do, remember this conversation. Remember that you brought this on yourself. The first move has been made. The line went dead. Curtis stood frozen, the dial tone buzzing in his ear like the sound of a trapped insect. The first move. Drew's words came back to him. It's meant to be a message. Something that will shatter your family's sense of security. He looked across the room at Portia and Trina, who were watching him with wide, fearful eyes. They were safe. TJ was safe, for the moment. What move could Sonny have already made? His phone buzzed again, this time with a text message from Drew. The preview line made his heart stop. Drew, Curtis, call me immediately. It's about your cousin, Marcus. Marcus. His younger cousin, the one who had always been a little too enamored with the fast life, the one who had occasionally run errands on the fringes of Sonny's organization. Curtis had tried to steer him straight, to get him a legitimate job, but Marcus was stubborn, drawn to the glamour and the power. With trembling fingers, Curtis called Drew back. Drew, he said, his voice hoarse. Curtis, where are you? Drew's voice was tight, strained. At the hospital. We're almost ready to move. What about Marcus? There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line, a silence that was more terrifying than any words. Drew, Curtis pressed, a terrible dread coiling in his gut. What about Marcus? He's gone, Curtis, Drew said, the words delivered with the soft finality of a falling guillotine. The PCPD just found his car abandoned down by the docks. There are signs of a struggle. A significant amount of blood. They're treating it as a probable homicide. The world tilted on its axis. Curtis's knees buckled, and he had to brace himself against the wall. Marcus. His loud, laughing, troublesome cousin. Gone. The message was not a threat against his business or his reputation. It was far more brutal, far more personal. Sonny, Curtis breathed into the phone, the name a curse. It has his fingerprints all over it, Drew confirmed, his voice grim. Not literally, of course. It was clean, professional. But this is it, Curtis. This is the opening salvo. He's showing you that he can reach anyone in your family, at any time. He's showing you that he has no boundaries. The message was received. Loud and clear. It wasn't just a business dispute, it was a declaration of war. And the first casualty was a member of his own bloodline. Curtis ended the call, his mind reeling. He had to get his immediate family to safety. That was the priority. But the grief, the rage, the sheer horror of what had happened to Marcus was a fire burning in his chest. He looked at Portia and Trina, their faces etched with a new layer of fear, sensing that something catastrophic had just happened. "Curtis?" Portia asked, her voice trembling. "What is it?" "You're white as a sheet." He couldn't tell them. Not about Marcus. Not now. The shock, the grief, could paralyze them, and they needed to move. The weight of the secret felt like a physical burden, threatening to crush him. "It's nothing," he lied, the words ash in his mouth. "Just security details. The transport is ready. Let's go." He herded them out of the room, following the medical team as they wheeled TJ's gurney down the corridor. The hospital, once a place of healing, now felt like a trap. Every corner, every closed door, seemed to hold a new threat. They moved through the sterile hallways, a somber procession toward the private elevator that would take them down to the secured garage where the ambulance was waiting. As they stepped out into the garage, the relative quiet of the hospital was replaced by the distant hum of the city. The medical team began the careful process of loading TJ into the back of the specialized vehicle. Curtis stood guard, his eyes scanning the shadows, his body a tense shield for his family. It was then that his phone buzzed for a third time. Another unknown number. His heart hammered against his ribs. He didn't want to answer it, but he had to. He had to know. He stepped a few feet away, turning his back to his family. "Ashford," he said. This time, it was a different voice. Younger, nervous. "Mr. Ashford? This is Officer Jenkins down at the 12th Precinct. We have a situation." Curtis closed his eyes, bracing for the next blow. "What situation?" "We received an anonymous tip about an hour ago. Led us to a storage unit on the outskirts of the city. We found a body." The words were a physical blow. Marcus. They had found Marcus. "I'm aware," Curtis said, his voice thick with a grief he couldn't yet show. "My cousin, Marcus." There was an awkward pause on the other end of the line. "No, sir. That's not it. The body we found, the identification on him, it's for A.T.J. Ashford." Time stopped. The sounds of the garage, the murmurs of the medical team, the hum of the ambulance engine, Portia's soft weeping, all faded into a dull, roaring silence. Curtis felt the ground lurch beneath his feet. He couldn't have heard correctly. "What did you say?" he whispered. "The body, sir. The ID and the personal effects we found on him, they all identify him as your son, T.J. Ashford. We need you or Dr. Robinson to come down and make a formal identification." Curtis turned slowly, his movements robotic. He looked at the back of the ambulance, where his son, the real TJ, was being secured by the medical team. He was alive. He was here. But according to the PCPD, he was also dead, lying on a cold slab in the morgue. And in that moment of horrific, dizzying clarity, Curtis understood the full, monstrous brilliance of Sonny's message. It wasn't just the murder of his cousin. That was the violence, the demonstration of power. This, the body, the false identification, was the psychological warfare. It was meant to break them. Sonny was sending them a body, forcing them to confront the chilling, false reality of their son's death while the real TJ fought for his life. It was a mind game of the most cruel and sadistic order, designed to shatter Portia, to destroy Trina, to push Curtis over the edge. He ended the call, his phone slipping from his numb fingers and clattering onto the concrete floor. The sound seemed to echo through the garage. Portia looked up at him, her maternal instinct screaming that something was terribly wrong. "Curtis? What is it? Who was that?" He looked at her, at the love of his life, already bearing the unimaginable weight of their son's condition. How could he tell her that the world was now telling her that her son was dead? How could he subject her to that torture? Trina saw the look on his face, a look of such profound horror and devastation that it stole the breath from her lungs. Dad? What's happening? Curtis opened his mouth, but no words came out. The carefully constructed plan to escape, to find safety, was crumbling around him. The threat wasn't just a physical one anymore, it was a venomous attack on their very sanity, their perception of reality. Sonny's plot was unfolding with a precision that was terrifying, and the Ashford family, already standing on the precipice of despair, was about to be pushed into an abyss of unimaginable horror. The body was coming. And with it, a pain that would test the very fabric of their souls. The war had begun, and the first casualty, beyond poor Marcus, was to be their peace. Drew Kane stood in a quiet corner of the Metro Court, his expression a mix of tension and frustration. The soft hum of chatter around him barely registered, his thoughts were consumed by what he had just learned. He had been digging into Sonny Corinthos's latest moves, trying to make sense of the chaos surrounding Port Charles lately. What he found out wasn't just troubling, it was dangerous. And the one person who deserved to know first was Curtis Ashford. Drew's loyalty to his friends always outweighed his instinct to stay out of the mob world's mess, but this time, the lines were blurring. Curtis needed the truth, no matter how hard it was to hear. When Curtis wheeled himself into the lobby, his sharp eyes instantly locked on Drew. "You look like you've been through hell," Curtis said, a half-smile trying to mask his concern. Drew exhaled and gestured toward the terrace. "We need to talk, somewhere private." The tone in his voice made Curtis's stomach drop. They moved outside, the cool night air wrapping around them. Drew hesitated for a moment, collecting his thoughts before speaking. "I found out something about Sonny," he said finally. Curtis tilted his head. "That never sounds good. What's he done this time?" Drew's jaw tightened. "It's not just about Sonny, it's about what he's planning. I think he's setting up a play against someone big. He's been meeting with people off the books, using false names, cash transfers, offshore accounts. He's covering his tracks like a pro." Curtis frowned, trying to process. That's not unusual for Sonny, though. He's always got something cooking. Drew nodded. "Yeah, but this is different. He's going after someone connected to the Ashford family." Curtis blinked. "What are you talking about?" Drew took a deep breath. "I think Sonny's planning to use your family as leverage in something he's got going down. There's a shipment coming in through the docks, something illegal, something dangerous. He wants to make sure no one interferes. And to guarantee that, he's targeting people who might stand in his way, including anyone with ties to you and Jordan." Curtis's voice rose slightly. "Hold on. You're saying Sonny Corinthos, the man who's practically family to half this town, is plotting against me and mine?" Drew nodded grimly. "That's exactly what I'm saying. And it gets worse." Curtis leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Worse how?" Drew hesitated before pulling out a folder from his jacket. "I got this from a contact in the bureau. There was an unidentified body found near the Canadian border last week, male, mid-30s, multiple gunshot wounds. At first, they thought it was random. But the man had something in his pocket, a badge belonging to someone who once worked undercover for Jordan. Someone tied to your past." Curtis's breath caught. "You think this body's connected to Sonny's plot?" Drew nodded. "I think whoever this guy was, he got too close to what Sonny's planning. And now he's dead." Curtis's fingers tightened around the arm of his chair. "So you're telling me Sonny might have had someone killed, and somehow this connects back to my family?" Drew looked away for a second before answering. "The timing fits. The pattern fits. And if I'm right, the next move Sonny makes could pull your whole family into danger." Inside, the Metro Court's lights glimmered against the glass, reflecting the tension between them. Curtis's voice broke the silence. "Why are you telling me this now, Drew? Why not go straight to the cops?" Drew sighed. "Because you deserve to know first. And I can't go to the cops, not yet. Sonny's got eyes everywhere, and if this leaks too soon, he'll know someone's on to him." Curtis nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the situation. You think he's capable of coming after my family? Drew didn't hesitate. I know he is. Later that evening, Curtis found himself sitting in the living room of the Ashford home, the weight of Drew's warning pressing down on him. Portia was pacing the floor, her nerves on edge. A body, Curtis? Are you sure this isn't just another one of Drew's war stories from his WSB days? Curtis looked up at her. He had proof, Portia. A badge, connected to Jordan's old case files. Whoever this guy was, he died trying to expose something. Portia shook her head, disbelief turning to fear. This can't be happening. After everything we've been through, you're shooting, Trina finally feeling safe, now this? Just then, Jordan walked in, her expression as cold as steel. I got your message, Curtis. What's going on? Curtis handed her the file Drew gave him. You need to see this. Jordan opened it, scanning the photos inside. Her eyes widened as she recognized the man's face. Oh my God, she whispered. This was Agent Travis. He went undercover years ago during a smuggling operation Sonny's people were linked to. He disappeared, and we assumed he went off-grid. Curtis leaned forward. Apparently not. Jordan swallowed hard. If this body is Travis, that means Sonny's cleaning up old loose ends. He must think someone's reopening the investigation. Portia's voice trembled. And if Drew's right, if Sonny's trying to silence people, then who's next? Jordan set the file down and took a deep breath. We need to get ahead of this. If Sonny's back in that mindset, no one in this town is safe. Meanwhile, Drew was back at Aurora Media, trying to piece together the rest of the puzzle. He had already put in a call to Sam and asked her to stay close to Scout, just in case. His phone buzzed, and when he saw Anna Devane's name, he didn't hesitate to answer. Anna, it's worse than I thought, Drew said. I think Sonny's targeting anyone tied to that 2015 operation, the one that never made it to trial. Anna's tone was sharp. That's a dangerous accusation, Drew. Are you certain? Drew ran a hand through his hair. Certain enough to be worried. And now there's a dead agent tied to Jordan's case. Curtis's family could be next. Anna sighed. I'll look into it discreetly. But if you're right, Sonny might be crossing a line even his allies won't tolerate. Hours later, as the night deepened, a knock at the Ashford home startled everyone. Portia hesitated before opening the door, only to find two officers standing outside. Mrs. Ashford, one of them asked solemnly. We're here regarding an identification request. Curtis's heart sank as Portia turned to him, her hand trembling. Identification? Of what? The officer hesitated before pulling out a manila envelope. A body was recovered earlier this evening matching certain records connected to your family. We need one of you to come down to the morgue. Jordan's breath hitched. Wait, are you saying the body Drew mentioned has been officially linked to us? The officer nodded slowly. That's correct. The silence that followed was thick with fear. Portia glanced at Curtis, tears forming. Who could it be? Curtis shook his head. I don't know. But if Sonny's behind this, we need to know what he's hiding. At the morgue, the sterile lights cast a cold glow over the sheet-covered form. Curtis's throat tightened as the attendant gently pulled it back. Jordan gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. It's him, she whispered. It's Travis. Curtis closed his eyes. The man's face, pale and lifeless, told the story of a war fought in shadows. He was trying to warn someone, Jordan said softly. He must have found out Sonny's plan and paid the price.